Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 333 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and also an author. Our third book is called From Letters to Leaders, Leveraging Your Fraternity or Sorority Experience to Land Your Dream Job. That just launched a couple of months ago on Amazon, so go and pick up that book today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, the University of Maryland is a very special place for me, not only because I've spoken there a couple of times and the students are absolutely wonderful, but also because I wouldn't be a fraternity man if not for the University of Maryland. I never attended the school as an undergraduate, but my big brother in the fraternity was actually initiated there as a student, and then he transferred to the University at Buffalo where I was, and he joined the same fraternity. That's where we met, at the University of Buffalo, and the rest, as they say, is history. Let's meet our next guest, who is a graduate of the University of Maryland. This is Naimah Bhuruku. She is a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner. As a trained facilitator, she guides individuals as they navigate uncertainty through empathy-filled empowerment. Naimah facilitates crucial conversations and curates brave spaces for engagement. She amplifies the voices of others so they can feel seen and heard, thus experiencing true belonging. This is Naimah's leadership purpose. Naimah champions young and developing professionals who seek to ascend in their careers and life, empowering them to channel their talents and passion with fierce focus. She curates experiences that connect people with resources, and she also spotlights hidden figures to aid in illuminating their path so that they shine. Welcome to the show, Naimah.
Wow, welcome. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I am excited to chat with you all. And yes, go Maryland. Yes, Terps.
Let's go Terps. Absolutely. I'm very, very thankful for that campus. I mean, it really did change my life, even though I've never attended school there ever in my life. Not undergraduate, not master's, not doctorate, nothing. But it has a special place in my heart. You see how that works?
We'll take you. We'll claim you. I'll claim you.
All right. As long as you claim me, that's all that matters to me. All right. So let's talk a little bit about your background because, I think all of this is really fascinating to me. As a Haitian American Muslim woman and a child of immigrant parents, you've experienced firsthand what it means to feel excluded. So talk to our listeners about your journey of seeking to belong, and how did that lead you to understanding the value of empath?
Thank you for that question. It's a really long answer, but I'm going to try to make it as sweet and short as possible. I'd say that my journey of belonging started really young. I grew up in South Jersey, in Willingboro, New Jersey, which is right outside of Philadelphia, about 45 minutes. And when we talk about belonging, here's the thing, right? All is well until you realize that you're different. So I was raised in a household with my parents, my siblings, my grandmother, and she used to walk me. My grandmother used to walk me to school every day in elementary school, and she would do school and so I would go to school with like a French beret, right? And for those who don't know about Haiti, we're influenced by the French. So she dressed me what she considered to be fashionable, stylish. I don't know if it was cool then, but I do remember getting comments. Berets are back in style right now, but I don't know if it was then. But let's just start there. That's when it started, right?
Yeah.
So you get to school, teachers ask breakfast, and I say eggs and plantain, coffee and bread. Not the typical American breakfast, but the typical Haitian breakfast. And I didn't know anything different until people were like, what is that? And then I started asking for cereal like everyone else. And then you open your lunchbox and then you have regular food, rice and chicken. And then you hear, ew, everyone has sandwiches and Lunchables. And I just wanted Lunchables at some point. And that was my earliest memories of being different, and beginning to really realize that I didn't necessarily do the same things as everyone else. Um, One of the things about the school that I was raised in, the community that I was raised in, it was a mix of different cultures for a time. And then over time, it became a predominantly African American community. And that's what I identified until I had a classmate ask me, what kind of Black am I? And I was confused. Now, I knew I was a little bit different because I would wear ribbons to school and super dressy clothes that my grandmother and my mother made together. And I started getting curious on what was different. I started observing differences around me so I could fit in better. And then puberty hit, and guess what? That marks when a Muslim woman with a headscarf, head veil, and I couldn't hide any longer. And I then began picking up on other people who were different like me. I started looking at different behaviors, how others, ask questions differently, how people would get picked on, and I gravitated to just trying to make the experience better for myself and others. And so in that experience of trying to belong, that experience of finding out who I was, is when I started cultivating the skill of being an empath and really drawing on what's going on around me in order to be able to make the best of the situation.
Wow, that is just an incredible story. I tell you what, it's funny because you wanted Lunchables. I want the chicken and rice. I'm sorry, did I say that?
In retrospect, I've had Lunchables. Once I tried it, it's like not really the thing.
Yeah, Lunchables is terrible. I don't know if you've seen them recently, but that's not good food.
It's not good food, but it was the thing then.
You had everything and you didn't even know it.
I didn't. I really didn't.
That's so funny. All right, so you decided on the University of Maryland for your undergraduate experience. You got a bachelor's degree in African American Studies and public policy. So tell our audience, what made Maryland the right choice for you at this point?
So Maryland, for one, I got some money. I got scholarships, so that helped. But I thought Maryland was close enough to home, but also far enough from home. It's about 2.5 hours from where I grew up. The area felt more diverse in general. It was in a metropolitan area. Having been raised in a pretty, I wanted a contrasting experience. So I was deliberate in choosing a school that offered a different experience and what it meant to be diverse. I knew no one, and having come from a smallish town, going new everywhere I went was refreshing, and I could essentially just start over. That's really why I chose to go to the University of Maryland.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I knew one person from my high school at the University at Buffalo, so it really was a fresh start. And I kind of was looking forward to that. I was like, all right, I can kind of create my own path, and people don't have preconceived ideas or preconceived notions about what they're getting with me. So that to me was kind of like refreshing. It was like a reboot almost.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things too is that I got into the engineering school there, and the other schools that I applied to, I didn't get into their engineering school. That's what I started as. And I was like, okay, I got a little bit of money. It's fitting all the other categories. I'm going there. So that's really how I landed there.
I like it. I like it. And you became a contract specialist for the Marine Corps and then later at NASA, of all places. So, how did you get into procurement work?
Wow. Okay. So it was through a professional development internship program. Prior to becoming a contract specialist, I was an academic advisor at a university. I wanted to try something different. I applied to hundreds of jobs, completely forgot what I applied to, got a call and said yes. I went into doing research right before the interview. Still didn't know what I was interviewing for. And, they said that we'll teach you everything you need to know. You have a degree, you have work experience, and that's how I started in the federal government. in the Marine Corps. And then there was an opportunity to do an external rotation at a different agency. I chose NASA because it was close to my home, and it's NASA. And I did that, and I did well, and an opportunity opened up for a full-time position, and that's how I got to NASA.
Wow, that's so incredible. Yeah, when NASA calls, you better pick up that phone. All right. Like, let's not mess around here. Okay. If I see NASA on my cell phone, you better believe I'm going to answer that phone call. All right. I mean, it's like everybody's dream, right? I mean, isn't that what you thought?
Yes, absolutely. I work with a lot of people who their dream job is here at NASA. That's what
Yeah.
they work their life for, and they're there. And NASA, a lot of people don't leave. And NASA, a lot of people don't leave. It was a dream, something that I didn't have on my radar at all, but I ended up there, and happily so.
Good for you. So now you're a diversity and inclusion specialist at NASA. Tell our audience, what types of projects do you get to work on?
So many. For one, I support formulating different center initiatives, inclusion and accessibility, management of ERGs, employee resource groups. If you're familiar with that, I facilitate difficult conversations across all levels. Our scientists, our engineers, for example, when there was the pandemic period, having office hours to talk about what's really happening, getting a pulse on our employees, finding out what conversations need to happen in the shifts that are going on. So there's that piece of it. There's also working on programming and training around belonging, inclusion, power, provision, power, privilege, policy pieces that revolve around the executive orders that come through the White House, and ensuring that the center and the agency align to it. So it's a host of programs. I'm also employee resource group program manager for early that they fully integrate on center, feel like they are part of the NASA community and family. So those are a host of things that I do in the office over at NASA. And I love it.
Wow, I'm jealous. That sounds like some really cool work and a great organization to work with. I also want to talk about something topical. I mean, you've seen the new Florida bill that clearly is attacking DEI programs. HB 999 would ban any program promoting DEI throughout the state of Florida. Apparently, they amended the language so that way student groups like historically Black fraternities and sororities aren't also banned. But can you talk about some of the harm that this particular bill would cause in the state of Florida?
The harm. I was thinking about this question, and how much time do we have? There's
Yeah,
so
I mean,
much
I think
here,
we should just
right?
talk about it. People
So
need to
much
know.
here, right? So I would first say that this bill undermines the countless strides of our educators, our civil rights activists, some of our world leaders um, that have made sure that learning is equitable in terms of content. What's actually being taught is what's happened in our history. We're talking about access and quality. I mean, remember, you're talking to someone who studied African American studies and college. So this ban, it's a whole like infrastructure of learning that has existed and that has been cultivated over time. And just from my experience, even though I was raised in an African American community and I identify as Black, I still wasn't taught history fully. It wasn't until I went to college, and the piece about critical race theory, that's something that goes even further down, like master's education, right? PhD education. So we're talking about some foundational pieces of our history as a nation. And it's really hard to talk about American history without racism, without the legacy of slavery, without some of these very hard things where we have to ask ourselves the questions how we got here, who are we as a nation, how do we evolve beyond what the experiences are, but have an academic experience that is inclusive and holistic. And this ban really removes parts of the history that make it a holistic understanding, which is a part of the identity of our nation.
Wow. So the students who are listening right now, I think the big question for all of them is what can they do to help to ensure that this bill doesn't pass in Florida and then maybe moves to other states?
Well, for one, get involved, right? Be aware of what's going on in the nation. Be understand what's relevant right now. One of the things that I have done is I used to work in legislation at some point. And there is really power in your voice, and there's a value in really shining light on what's going on in our institutions. More than anything, let this be a wake-up call that your voice matters, your vote matters at the local and state elections. That is where a lot of the decision making happens. That's where it starts. That's where it's birthed. So know who your politicians are. Get present. Encourage your peers. Get present. Encourage your peers to get platforms for education. Use multiple platforms for your awareness and education, so that you can really be a part of making history and a part of stopping what may be detrimental for our nation.
That's a great answer. I really like that a lot. And, you and I, we met at a fraternity and sorority conference. I'm wondering, I mean, your knowledge of fraternity and sorority, your knowledge of student organizations, how do we create an inclusive culture in these organizations?
Well, a lot of times it starts with asking some hard questions. I mentioned that before. First off, how do we currently embody inclusivity? What is it right now? What is our baseline? Do we know our blind spots? A lot of times that is where we miss the mark, right? Um, One of the pieces to understand is that the fraternity sororities, the histories that exist, there are some that are deeply rooted in some racism, homophobia, transphobia, classism, ableism. And that is a contributing factor in how some of the sororities and fraternities have evolved. No, right? For some, no. For some, you might not be aware of it. Yes, right? So we have to look out what is the outreach and inreach strategies that are used? How are we casting our net to ensure that we have a marketing to, right? We have to be very honest with ourselves because there are implicit biases that exist. Like attitudes and stereotypes. Does this one person have the look? Does this person not have the look, right? We want to get away from that and look we can really ensure that anyone who has an interest in the fraternity sororities have a fair opportunity to get involved. So yes, I would say just starting out with asking the questions, who's to my left and who's to my right? Who's not represented? Who is? In our marketing, do we have different faces on the marketing? And beyond that, do we have people within our organization that look differently, that are different, right? And different is such a plain word, but it encompasses so much, right? It encompasses race, gender, ability. It's a wide scope. And so start with a question, how do we currently embody the inclusivity that we're seeking?
Yeah, I love the way that you answered that question. And you're absolutely right. I mean, when we talk about diversity, it's not just race, it's also country of origin. It's also religion, it's, physical abilities, it's so much sexual orientation and on and on and on. I mean, it goes on forever.
It does.
Right. And so I think we have to figure out a way to bring attention to the diversity in our organization. And it does go much more beyond just race. And so I want students to start thinking about that. And so I really like all of that. One of the things that the college students today seem to be really struggling with is just resiliency. I mean, they're going to face all kinds of adversity in their careers. I am sure, I'm willing to bet the farm on it, that you faced adversity in your career. So how do we build resilience with today's students?
Well, one thing that I think that we should understand of the now, right, is that we're in this post-traumatic growth period. We've all collectively been in this space of dealing with the trauma of what has been the last few years. Um, Oftentimes, resilience is praised, and adaptability is praised, and that is wonderful. And we have to have context around mental health, right? We want to ensure that we have some insight that our college students time in formative years, in ways that, that they can connect differently, doing the remote work. And I emphasize the importance of mental health because it matters. And resiliency, it starts with the question. It begins with, how do you ask for help? Do you know how to ask for help, realizing that you don't have the capacity? Do you realize that you don't have to be on the journey alone? Resilience is really about just to work through and overcome obstacles. There's been a lot of obstacles, and they will come. I guarantee you that. I have many years past college. But building that, there are many things that I would recommend. Connecting with other students, finding communities that you would like to be a part of, connecting with advisors and mentors. Make sure that there is a plan or some idea, where can you get help? Who can you call? This, I feel, is absolutely necessary because the rise of mental health challenges has increased. So what's in your adulting toolkit is what I ask when we talk about resiliency. Therapist, is there a friend? Is there a resource? Is there an app? Right? Think about all these things when we discuss about resiliency. Then there's goal setting pieces, right? For college students, what are some things that you feel more equipped? And being equipped may mean, if you're someone who's an introverted person and you want to be able to feel more connected, okay, maybe I know that there's this event that's happening. I'm going to commit to going once a month to connect well, right? So I just wanted to say that you can get really creative when it comes to resilience, but really check in with yourself and have an adulting toolkit that includes, friends, family, other, right? To connect with and speak to.
I'm loving that adulting toolkit. Very, very good. So, the college students who are listening right now, they are laser focused on jobs and careers. I mean, there is nothing that is more important to them at this moment. So, why do you believe that self-awareness is the key to career success?
You have to be aware of your capacity, what you know and what you don't know, right? It touches back on the last question about knowing who to ask for. I'll tell you this. I remember when I was in college, I had an academic advisor. Not all academic advisors are made equally. And that advisor told me college is not for everyone. I might want to rethink college and leave. That very same advisor, my job as an academic advisor, working side by side. So why do you believe self-awareness is really key? Why do I believe that it's key? Because sometimes you only have you to believe in yourself. It's a mental reset and reframe. A lot of what will make you successful, you already have, right? When you know yourself, you know your strengths, you know where your weaknesses are. You'll be able to ask for assistance on the areas that might be a weakness. You may be able to lean in where you know there's a strength. It really gives you a better understanding on what your unique abilities are. Now, in terms of like professional growth, for example, self-awareness is important because here, I didn't have a linear career journey. I don't think most people don't have a linear career journey. Pivot when it's necessary, when you feel like you're not growing anymore. It's important to be able to say, okay, I'm not afraid, right? Like, I have to do something that I might have never thought of doing. I never planned to be in procurement. I didn't know what procurement was. Okay? I could have stayed doing what was comfortable, but I would not have gotten to where I am right now. The other piece about self-awareness is the ability to influence other people in a good way, right? Can lean in deeply, more deliberately, knowing like, hey, I'm really great at organizing, right? I'm really great at pulling people together. I'm really great at speaking in public. Utilize those skills, leverage that for the benefit of yourself, for the benefit of others, for the benefit of community. And having that awareness about yourself is important. And then the other piece, you want to be happy at the end of the day. Whichever path you take, you want to be happy. What makes you happy? What gives you joy? What really rocks your spirit? In your career journey, money is nice, but it doesn't keep you there. It doesn't keep you there. You'll continue to move and move and move and move. You have to have a degree of contentment in whatever it is that you choose to do, whether it pays a lot of money, or a little bit of the satisfaction that you have when you go home at the end of the day is what matters the most.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, you have to feel fulfilled in what you do. And I think in the beginning, early on in my career, I felt like it was all about money and having all these like cool toys, a big house, a big car, or whatever. And then you get older and you realize none of that stuff is important. Nobody really cares. Honestly, I swear to God, nobody cares. It's really at the end of the day, like, what is your legacy going to be on this planet? And if you think that success is a straight line, I got some news for you. It's not. It's not. It's a series of wrong turns where you correct, you make a left instead of a right. Sometimes you got to make a U-turn and actually start heading in the other direction completely. I mean, so if you think it's a straight line, I got news for you. It's not. I mean, I made a million mistakes. I think that's another thing. I think college students need to feel comfortable making mistakes because that's ultimately how they're going to find their path. So I think this has been really, really fun. This has been a great conversation. Now, we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. You live in Maryland, near the Washington, D.C. area. Are there any really great restaurants that you just love and we should go and try?
Oh my gosh, there's so many places. Okay. I would say that I have a world palette. So I'm going to give you a few. If you want a traditional Maryland, DC, Virginia seafood spot, Jimmy's Famous Seafood in Baltimore for crab cakes.
Yes.
They have the best seafood. If you want something a little bit more Cuba de Ayer, Cuban. That's a Cuban restaurant. Amina Thai. I love Thai food. Giselle's.
Yeah.
Haitian food. If you want Haitian food, I mean, I'm Haitian.
Yeah.
And then there's a place called Just Jerk. I feel like they have the best jerk in town. Others might fight me on that, but that's just my opinion. It was those few. I don't know how many that was, but those are a few restaurant options that I'd recommend.
You and I can hang out anytime because we like all the same food. And so I would be eating crab. I will be eating Thai like every day. I mean, Haitian food, all of it. Give me all of it.
Let's do it. The next time you're in the area, let me know. I'll be happy to join you somewhere.
This has been a lot of fun. Listen, so if our student listeners, if they want to connect with you for speaking or consulting services, where should our listeners go to connect with you?
Yes, you can find me on my website, www.naimahbhuruku.com. That's spelled NaimahBhuruku.com. I think I spelled that right. Yeah. On Instagram, it's Naimah Khalifa. That's NaimahKhalifa, like Wiz Khalifa. And on LinkedIn, just look me up, Naimah Khalifa Bhuruku, and you'll be able to find me. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to connect and just share a little bit of my experience, any questions that you may have.
Wow, what a ride, Naimah, man. I tell you what, you are a force. So I can't wait to see what's next for you. I mean, you're already at NASA. I'm like, where else are you going to go from here? I mean, you're already at the best.
Infinity and beyond. Infinity and beyond. That was a terrible joke.
This has been a lot of fun. This has been great. All right. So listen, thank you so much for being here. To our student listeners, if you like this talk with Naimah, make sure you like it and share it with other college students on your campus. And what can I say? We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much. And we're going to see you next time.